There was a decade when dessert wasn't the enemy of a woman's waistline, it was practically weightless. The Betty Crocker 1500. Calorie au May Cookbook, 1950, sat open on every counter in America, offering gelatin molds and lightly sweetened custards instead of the sugar-heavy indulgences we know today. Women clipped these recipes, filed them, served them nightly. Then, without warning, an entire category of American dessert simply disappeared from memory. These 15 recipes are what's left of it, and they raise a question we're only now starting to ask. Number 15. Knox Gelatin Whip with Fruit. Unflavored. Knox gelatin beaten to a foam with a rotary hand beater, then folded with canned fruit cocktail. Fewer than 70 calories a serving. Knox gelatin in the red box. 10 cents at the grocery. Del Monte fruit cocktail at 29 cents a can. The gelatin dissolved in hot water, then chilled until it thickened to the texture of raw egg whites. Then the rotary beater, minutes of steady cranking until the gelatin tripled in volume. A pale, trembling cloud of almost nothing. The fruit folded in gently, spooned into dessert dishes and chilled again. It looked like something from a tea room. A woman could serve this at a bridge club luncheon and no one would know she was watching her figure. That was the whole point. Discipline looked like hospitality. That dessert required patience with a hand beater. But the next one required something even harder to come by in a 1950s kitchen. Restraint with the sugar bowl. Number 14. Baked custard with nutmeg. Eggs, milk, a whisper of sugar, vanilla, and fresh nutmeg. Baked in a water bath, a standard Betty Crocker recipe with the sweetness cut by 2/3. 3 eggs from the icebox. A cup of pet evaporated milk thinned with water. 1 tablespoon of sugar where the original recipe called for 3. A scrape of whole nutmeg across the fine grater. That smell alone could fill a kitchen. Pyrex custard cups set in a roasting pan of hot water. Into the oven at 325 degrees, 35 minutes. You knew it was done by the jiggle. Tap the edge of the cup and the center should tremble but not wave. A dessert so plain it announced nothing. That was the sophistication. She did not advertise her effort to stay slim. She served it warm with a little nutmeg on top and never said a word about it. Number 13. Junket Rennet Custard. Junket brand rennet tablets dissolved in lukewarm milk, set at room temperature. An enzymatic dessert almost nobody alive remembers now. The little box with the Danish girl on the front. 10 cents at the A&P. 1 tablet crushed with a spoon and dissolved in lukewarm milk, not heated. The rennet enzyme did the work, coagulating the milk into a soft custard without cooking. Vanilla or chocolate flavor. Ready in an hour on the kitchen counter. Barely 60 calories. A strange cool wobble when you tilted the dish. Not quite custard. Not quite pudding. Something in between that has no modern equivalent. Junket was marketed directly to mothers and dieters through the 1950s. By the mid-70s, it had nearly vanished from American grocery shelves. A whole category of dessert, enzyme set rather than cooked, simply ceased to exist. Number 12. Canned peach halves with cottage cheese. A single peach half from a can of Del Monte or Libby's, drained, filled with a scoop of cottage cheese, dusted with cinnamon, the heavy syrup poured off, sometimes the peach rinsed under the tap, Breakstones or seal-test cottage cheese, cold from the icebox. 1 rounded scoop dropped into the hollow where the pit had been. A shake of McCormick cinnamon from the tin. The whole thing served on a leaf of iceberg lettuce on a salad plate. Fewer than 100 calories. That sweet and savory combination that confused children but satisfied mothers entirely. This was lunch and dessert on a single plate for thousands of American women who never once used the word calorie out loud. She put it on her good china and called it a salad. Number 11. Prune whip. Stewed prunes pureed and folded into stiffly beaten egg whites, baked or chilled. A Depression-era holdover that survived well into the 50s as a diet staple. Sun-sweet prunes simmered until soft, about 15 cents a box, pushed through a sieve or mashed with a fork until smooth. Egg whites beaten stiff with a rotary beater. The two folded together carefully with a few drops of lemon juice, spooned into Pyrex custard cups, baked for 15 minutes at 300 degrees or chilled in the frigid air. Light as meringue, dark as molasses, about 80 calories a serving. It sounds unthinkable now, a prune dessert served to company. But she made it, and her family ate it, and nobody questioned a woman who could make something that plain taste that good. 5 recipes in, and every single one came from ingredients already in the pantry or the icebox. No special trip to the store, no special section of the grocery aisle. That was the whole architecture of diet eating before the diet industry existed. These were not diet recipes the way we use that word now. There was no brand name on them, no spokesman, no before and after photograph. A woman simply made less of something sweet and served it on her best dishes. The discipline was invisible. The restraint was the recipe. That entire philosophy was erased the moment somebody figured out how to put a trademark on the word light. Number 10. Homemade sugar-free gelatin molds. Plain Knox gelatin set with unsweetened fruit juice instead of sugar, poured into decorative copper or aluminum molds. This was years before Jell-O ever released an artificially sweetened product line. Knox gelatin dissolved in hot water, then topped off with cold grapefruit juice or unsweetened pineapple juice from a Dole can. Poured into a ring mold or individual dessert cups. Chilled for 3 hours. Then the ritual of unmolding, the tap, tap, tap of the mold on the counter, the slow release, the gleam of light passing through the amber gel, served on a plate lined with lettuce leaves. Close to 0 sugar. Almost no calories to speak of. When Jell-O reformulated their Deserta diet gelatin line through the 50s, they were selling back a technique women had already been doing at home for free. The kitchen had solved it first. The factory showed up later with a price tag. Number 9. Angel Food Cake. 12 egg whites, cream of tartar, sugar, and cake flour. No butter, no oil, no egg yolks. The original low-fat cake, baked in a tube pan and cooled upside down. Swan's down cake flour sifted 3 times through a hand sifter. A full dozen egg whites brought to room temperature on the counter. The steady whir of an electric mixer or the long minutes of cranking a rotary hand beater. Cream of tartar at 5 cents a tin from the spice shelf, the agonizingly slow fold of sifted flour into stiff meringue. The tall tube pan inverted over a bottleneck to cool so the cake would not collapse. About 70 calories a slice. A cake made almost entirely of AIR and patience. Every woman in America knew angel food was the diet cake. Nobody ever said so out loud. You baked one and the neighbors complimented your technique. The figure watching stayed between you and the recipe card. Number 8. Unsweetened homemade applesauce. Apples peeled, cored, and simmered until soft. Mashed with cinnamon, no sugar added. Served warm or cold as dessert in place of pie. A bag of Cortland or Macintosh apples in October. Peeled with a paring knife at the kitchen table. Quartered and dropped into a heavy pot with an inch of water. Simmered on a low flame until they collapsed into themselves. The kitchen windows fogged with sweet apple steam. Mashed with a potato masher right in the pot. A shake of cinnamon. Spooned into mason jars and stored in the icebox. About 50 calories a serving. The children ate it alongside pork chops on a Tuesday. Mother ate it in place of the pie she did not bake. It was not really a recipe. It was what apples did when you left them alone long enough. The simplest dessert in America, and the one that never needed a single word of justification. That was a dessert that doubled as preservation. The next recipe doubled as something else entirely. Medicine. Number 7. Hot lemon water with honey. A cup of hot water with fresh lemon juice and half a teaspoon of honey. Sipped after supper as the sweet course. Counted as dessert in many diet-conscious households of the era. The kettle whistling on the stove, a sun-kissed lemon cut in half on the cutting board. Squeezed into a ceramic cup. Half a teaspoon of sous vide honey stirred in from the jar. 15 calories. Sipped slowly in the living room after the dishes were done while the family watched Gunsmoke on the Philco. The warmth of it in both hands, the tartness replacing the craving for something richer. It was not deprivation. It was a woman deciding to end her day with something warm and simple. The dessert was the ritual itself, not the sweetness. Number 6. Frozen banana slices. A ripe banana sliced into rounds and frozen on wax paper in the freezer compartment. Eaten straight from the freezer like candy. A Chiquita banana at 10 cents, sliced into half-inch coins on the cutting board. Laid flat on a sheet of cut-right wax paper on a cookie sheet. Frozen solid in the freezer compartment of the Frigidaire. The dense, cold sweetness of a banana round on the tongue. The way it turned almost creamy as it thawed in the mouth. Children did not know these were diet food. They fought over the last ones in the tray. She solved dessert with a banana and a freezer. No recipe card, no brand name, no company involved at any step. That is exactly why nobody remembers it now. Notice what none of these 15 recipes required. A box with a celebrity face promising results. A meal plan, a membership card, a weekly weigh-in at a strip mall meeting room. The woman was her own authority. Her kitchen was her clinic. Her own good judgment was the only system she needed. The diet industry did not replace something that had failed. It replaced something that was working perfectly well. And then it charged admission. Number 5. Whipped evaporated milk topping. A can of Pet or Carnation evaporated milk, chilled until ice crystals formed, then beaten with a rotary beater until it peaked like real whipped cream. Half the fat, half the calories. A small can of Pet evaporated milk placed in the freezer compartment for about 90 minutes. Ice crystals just forming at the edges. Poured into a chilled mixing bowl. Beaten hard with the rotary beater. A tablespoon of lemon juice added to stabilize the foam. It rose and thickened into soft peaks that held their shape on a spoon. Dolloped over gelatin molds, over fresh berries, over a slice of angel food cake. The illusion was nearly perfect. She could put a white cloud on top of any plain dessert and transform it into company food. The whole secret was a 14-cent can and a cold bowl. Number 4. Baked apple with cinnamon. A whole apple, cored but not cut through the bottom, filled with a pinch of sugar and cinnamon. Baked in the oven until the skin split and the juices ran dark. A Rome Beauty or Jonathan apple. Cored with a twist corer, a teaspoon of sugar and a heavy shake of cinnamon dropped into the hollow. A pat of butter the size of a thumbnail. Set in a baking dish with a 1/4 inch of water. Into the oven at 350. Baked until the skin crackled open and the kitchen filled with the smell of caramelized apple and warm cinnamon. About 90 calories, served in a bowl with a spoon. A whole baked apple on a plate looked generous. It looked like a real dessert. That was the craft, making something small look like enough. Number 3. Dietetic canned fruit. Commercially canned fruit packed in water instead of heavy syrup. sold under brand names that almost no one remembers now. Tillie Lewis, Tasti-Diet, and Diet Delight, two of the first mass-market diet food products in American history. Tillie Lewis launched her Tasti-Diet line of canned fruits in 1952 out of Stockton, California. Peaches, pears, and fruit cocktail packed in water with saccharin sweetener. About 40 calories a serving compared to 120 in heavy syrup pack. Sold at the A&P for 35 cents a can, a nickel more than regular. The labels were plain and simple. The taste was sharper, cleaner, without the heavy syrup fog that masked the fruit. Tillie Lewis was one of the first women to build and run a major American food company. She created an entire diet food category before that category had a name. Today, almost nobody knows she existed. The diet industry she helped invent forgot her first. That was the first commercially packaged answer. But the two recipes that outlasted everything else on this list never needed a factory or a label. They needed a stove, a bowl, and 10 minutes. Number 2. Meringue cookies. Egg whites beaten stiff with sugar, dropped by the spoonful onto a baking sheet, and baked at low heat until dry and crisp. Some women called them forgotten cookies because they went into a hot oven that was then turned off and left closed overnight. 2 egg whites at room temperature, half a cup of sugar beaten in 1 tablespoon at a time, a drop of vanilla, a drop of white vinegar to hold the peaks, spooned onto a greased cookie sheet in small rounds, into the oven at 250 degrees for 40 minutes, or into a 350-degree oven, then the heat shut off and the door left closed until morning. By dawn, they were done. Crisp shells that shattered at the first bite and dissolved on the tongue. About 10 calories each. Sometimes a scattering of chocolate chips folded in when company was coming. The powdery sweetness inside the shell. The faint crack when you bit through. She made cookies from egg whites and AR, and they tasted like the real thing. No child ever asked what was missing from them. That was the highest compliment a diet recipe could ever earn. Number 1. Plain gelatin with fresh fruit. Jell-O or Knox gelatin set with fresh or canned fruit. The single most common diet dessert served in American homes from roughly 1945 to 1970. Ubiquitous, universal, and now completely gone from the American supper table. A box of Jell-O at 7 cents, or Knox unflavored gelatin at a dime dissolved in fruit juice, strawberry, lime, cherry, orange, dissolved in a cup of hot water. A cup of cold water stirred in, fruit folded through, banana slices suspended in lime, mandarin orange segments drifting in orange, crushed pineapple settled through cherry, poured into the copper ring mold, into the Tupperware mold, into the cut glass dessert dishes from the wedding set that only came out on Sundays. Chilled for 3 hours, unmolded onto a plate, the cool spoon cutting through the surface, the clean wobble, 80 calories or fewer, served after every weeknight supper in millions of American homes for the better part of 30 years. Today, the average American woman spends over $700 a year on diet products, programs, and supplements. The gelatin mold in her grandmother's kitchen cost 7 cents and worked better than any of them. This was the diet dessert of the American 20th century. A woman made it so often she did not need the recipe card anymore. She made it so automatically it was not even a decision. It was just what came after the pot roast and before the dishes. And then one day it stopped. The molds went to the garage sale. The dessert dishes went out to the back of the cabinet. And the simplest, cheapest, most effective diet dessert in American history vanished from the table, replaced by a 100-calorie snack pack that cost $4 and never worked half as well. 15 desserts. Not one of them required a diet book, a nutritionist, a subscription, or a credit card. They required a stove, a hand beater, a mold, and the quiet belief that a woman already had everything she needed. Most of it was already in her kitchen. And somewhere right now, a woman is opening her grandmother's recipe box for the first time in years. The index card is stained and faded. Lime gelatin, fruit cocktail, chill 3 hours. She reads it once, sets it on the counter, and reaches for the pot.